All right. Well, trans activists are the subject of debate right now, and their main issue is around the New York Times. On Wednesday, a group of 200 writers published a letter to the paper stating concerns over the paper's coverage of trans issues. And then the very next day, the paper featured a story about trans rights activists' public enemy number one, JK Rowling. She is, of course, the author of the Harry Potter novels, amongst other things. And what?
I've heard of her.
Have you? The letter by writers takes issue with how the paper has what they say, quote, vilified transness as a disease to be feared. Now, I'm confused by this because gender dysphoria is, in fact, considered a mental health disorder. So maybe they should take that up with the American Psychological Association. They do actually define gender identity disorder as a person who identifies with a separate gender than what they were born. And in fact, they exhibit extreme discomfort and distress by their gendered body. It is a diagnosis. So fear is a choice we all have when they say that, they are presenting transness as a disease to be feared. Well, that's your choice, whether you're afraid of it or not, but they're presenting it as the disorder as that it is. But, again, this is why they demand medicine and medical care, because it is, in fact, a disorder. That it's a real disorder that requires professionals. The writers say that the Times cover this like something to be feared, but I guess, they're thinking that you don't have a range of emotions to choose from, and they're telling you how you feel. You feel afraid. The writers also take issue with the paper's coverage of medical interventions. They say that puberty blockers, hormone replacement therapy, and gender-affirming surgeries have been standard forms of care for cis and trans people alike for decades. That's a lie. It's not true. There are no standards of care. Most doctors prescribing hormones use it kind of like the Clinique counter. Like, are you getting boobs enough? Are you getting facial hair enough? Let's up or down your medicine. There is not like, you are this age and weight, you should have this much. Most of the medicine that they prescribe are used, for instance, for cancer patients or for other serious disease. It is absolutely not been used for gender dysphoria for decades. So for them to say that, for instance, they took issue with the Emily Bazelton. She's from the Slate Political Podcast.
Bazelon.
Yeah, she wrote about the sort of contraindications of these drugs, and she pointed out quite rightly that it can cause hair loss to be on these hormones. That's just the fact. And they said, oh, you're covering this negatively. And I felt like she only just kind of mentioned it as an aside, like one person detransitioned, she said in the piece, because they were losing their hair and didn't want to anymore. And that can sometimes happen. And she didn't follow up on any of the other negative side effects of these drugs, such as, osteoporosis and, memory loss and loss of puberty. And I'm going to talk about those a little bit more. Again, the New York Times has not responded to this letter, but instead they put out this piece about JK Rowling, saying that this is an opinion piece, but they say that nothing Rowling has ever said qualifies as transphobic. I agree with them. They say she is not disputing the existence of gender dysphoria. She's never voiced opposition to allowing people to transition under evidence-based therapeutic and medical care. She is not denying trans people equal pay or housing. There is no evidence that she is putting trans people in danger, nor is she denying their right to exist. This is what the New York Times is saying, and I am applauding the New York Times. I agree. Here are a few notable pieces.
I can't believe we'd actually side with the New York Times.
Yeah, I'm willing to do this because...
This is crazy. Like, they're actually taking a stand on this.
I can't believe that they published this because of how hard it is to say these things. Here is a bit from this piece. One of her former critics, E.J. Rosetta, a journalist who once denounced Rowling for her supposed Transphobia, was commissioned last year to write an article called 20 Transphobic JK Rowling Quotes We're Done With. And after 12 weeks of reporting and reading, Rosetta wrote, I've not found a single truly transphobic message. On Twitter, she declared, you're burning the wrong witch. And this writer who wrote this New York Times opinion piece said, for the record, I too read all of Rowling's books, including the crime novels written under the pen name Robert Galbraith, and came up empty-handed.
Wow.
And so, they're looking for it. They can't find it. She says, quote from JK Rowling, she says, the pushback is often people say to her, you're wealthy, you can afford security, you haven't been silenced. All true, but I think that misses the point. The attempt to intimidate and silence me is meant to serve as a warning to other women with similar views who may wish to speak out. And I say that because I have seen it used this way, she says. When other women speak, they've been warned, look what happened to JK Rowling, watch yourself. Like, if you say these things, you don't have a security guard. You don't have the, cushy safety net of all of these book royalties. So you better STFU, because this would hurt you in a way they cannot hurt her. She has been speaking lately, which she usually does not. She says very little. She was not even in the 20th Harry Potter reunion HBO special. They only played like clips of her from years past, and I was heartbroken over this.
Yeah, same.
So yeah, she never comes out. She does not want to. She says things that I think are thoughtful and calculated. She does things with her money, which again, I think are thoughtful and calculated, but she never comes out and speaks very much. But she has been speaking because of this new podcast coming out with a writer named Megan Phelps Roper, which is called The Witch Trials of JK Rowling. We've decided to play you the 90-second trailer of the podcast.
Why do you like Harry Potter?
It's a story about acceptance and love.
Like, I had not such a great childhood, and I think a kid with not such a great childhood actually escaped to something else in a book.
Teaches, the importance of friendships, the importance of forgiveness.
The way people pull together, they're different. They don't all exactly agree with one another, but they can say, okay, this is the common good, and this is what we're going to work for.
What do you think of JK Rowling?
So there's a lot of controversy with that one.
So I have a comment I'll say off the thing.
I never set out to upset anyone. However, I was not uncomfortable with getting off my pedestal. And what has interested me over the last 10 years, and certainly in the last few years, the last 2-3 years, particularly on social media, you've ruined your legacy. Oh, you could have been beloved forever, but you chose to say this. And I think you could not have misunderstood me more profoundly.
I'm Megan Phelps Roper, and coming soon, The Witch Trials of JK Rowling. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, I'm in for this, but I have long supported JK Rowling because I don't think what she's saying is transphobic. I think that what she's asking us to do is think through the nuances of supporting trans rights and what it does to women's rights.
Yeah.
And what she has consistently said is trans people should be free and exist, but they should not impinge on women's rights. And now, because of even just the title of this podcast, Phelps Roper, the host, has become trans enemy number 2 because she called this a witch trial, which it has the connotation of someone who's wrongfully accused.
Yeah.
People will not even debate the merit of what she says. They just want to burn her at the stake, basically. And now, because of the way they think that this is going to maybe abscond her, they don't want it because they need her as like the sort of pin around which trans rights activists can work themselves into a frenzy and call her hateful without actually debating the words.
And it really upset me when I saw the cast, like Daniel Radcliffe and them come out against her, because I just recently watched an interview that she did years ago with Daniel Radcliffe, and it's like they were interviewing each other. And the adoration she had for those characters and those kids, like she was like so concerned with like the fame that they got, and they would not be where they are today without her. And the fact that they didn't do their due diligence and do that, like that just really upsets me, because it's like, you're right. They like need an enemy, but for what? Like, why do they need that? And the thing is, like, why would you take somebody that hasn't done that and make them an enemy when she's actually an ally? If you look at what she says, she is actually an ally.
Well, because they love tearing people down, right? This is, it's the great story. Someone has enormous success, and then you're going to have trolls. You're going to have people that want to bring people down. That's why People magazine sells, right? That's why these tabloid magazines sell, right? Because
but there's a lesson here about maturity, because the actors who have come out in support of her, Helena Bonham Carter and Ralph Fiennes, were the adults in the room,
right?
And the kids, the actors who played the kids, have said the less mature thing, in my opinion. I mean, they're like 30 now.
Although Hagrid, what's his name? I don't forget the actor that played Hagrid.
Just died.
He just passed away, but he also came out in support of her.
I didn't know that.
And then when he died, people were like, thank God that transphobe died. I'm like, really? Because he supported what JK Rowling said about women's rights? He's I mean, people
have been fired for just liking
Coltrane,
her tweets. I mean, she's become that hot button. So, I mean, but she's got Voldemort on her side. So that's a good thing. Now, I want to bring you this update, speaking of trans rights, about this legislation introduced in Maryland that would get Medicare to cover trans hormones and surgery. Medicare and Medicaid already do this in Oregon, but this new bill would prevent healthcare professionals also from issuing adverse determination about gender-affirming treatment. So you can read it here. It's talking about providing medically necessary gender-affirming treatment in a non-discriminatory manner. The part that gives me pause here is in the middle here, where you see it picks up prohibiting the program from issuing an adverse benefit determination related to gender-affirming treatment unless a healthcare provider with experience providing or prescribing gender-affirming treatment has reviewed and confirmed the appropriateness of the determination. So do you think this means that a healthcare provider cannot tell children that the treatments may be adverse to their body unless that only certain people can say this? So let's say you're a nurse and you may see, before you consider this, like these hormones can cause memory loss and osteoporosis and sterility and weight gain. And, that people who say those things are prohibited now unless they are specific doctors only. That's what that says to me.
Lupron, which is the drug that's used, is actually used in prisons to castrate some prisoners. I don't know if I can say the word. The P word.
Yes, it is.
And also, I saw a girl that was talking, and she did a video. She's a detransitioner. This is just the other day. And she said when she first went to Planned Parenthood, they got her because she was having gender dysphoria and she was hanging out with friends, and she was like, yeah, I think I could be trans. They're saying like, you're definitely trans. You need to go do something. And she just got kind of, thinking, okay, I must be. So she went to Planned Parenthood, and they got her on testosterone the following day and then started pressuring her to get the surgeries. Like, you need to start getting ready for the surgeries. We need to get you going like ASAP. Like no evaluation or anything. The next day she was on testosterone.
So what this language says to me, though, is that because there was the first real whistleblower out of, I think it was Kansas, it might have been, or Missouri, just this week, who said, look, we were giving these kids these hormones and they were getting worse. Their mood swings were getting worse. Their relationship with their family is getting worse. Their depression is getting worse, because no one's saying that these things will be solved by, changing your body to slowly look like something else. Like, those things persist, and more fixated on what they look like rather than less. And she said, we're hurting these kids. They're having all kinds of medical problems. I wish that I had maybe said something to them. And so it seems to me that this legislation is written to prohibit anyone who has seen these adverse effects of what's happening to these children's bodies, they wouldn't be able to say it. Is that what you read from this, guys? Prohibiting the program from issuing adverse benefit determination? So you can't say like, well, the benefit is you'll start to get some boobs, but you may still be depressed and your weight gain will redistribute to your hips and you will start to have memory loss and you may lose your hair and have osteoporosis. That you could not say that?
No, you're not allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, because I think the thinking is if we try to talk them out of it, they might off themselves, right? Because it's like that's the thing. They're like, if you don't do this, you will end up potentially offing yourself.
Yes, but that's very suggestive, and that's a whole other thing that you should never.
I'm just saying the reasoning that they're trying not to push the.
And it's kind of crazy if you listen to, there's a fabulous podcast of a woman who's critical of the psychological standards right now in dealing with gender dysphoria. She's like, never in any other case do we tell people, oh, we'll deal with this so that you don't, harm yourself or end your life. Like, would you tell this to a widow? Like, oh, we better deal with this so you don't go and end your life. Or would you tell this to an anorexic? Or would you tell this to, like, this is the only place where we're like, well, we better deal with this so that you don't end your life. It makes no sense. Like, and it's a smoking gun. As soon as you say it, it's in the room, right? And the child will say it too and has learned to say it.
Well, it looks to me like the wording is saying that there's no prohibition on touting the benefit of it, but you have to have a specialist, like say the negatives. So it's like, you don't need that specialist to tout. So it would be like if you take not something that's similar, but if you look at like something like oxycodone, if the person prescribing it could only say this will take care of all of your pain, and then they're not allowed to mention the fact that it's a narcotic and highly addictive.
Right.
If they're not allowed to say that, they're like, but unless they get to that point where they need that other person to come in and be like, now I'm an actual professional and I'm saying that there could be problems. It's just it's weird. It's opening up the idea that you can only speak the benefits, but unless you're like state certified to speak the negatives, you're not allowed to.
Yeah. And so think of a nurse that has to come in and give you this and know, okay, gay child, I'm about to sterilize you. Here you go. That I find this language extremely troubling, and seems to me that it was written from a pharmaceutical company.
Of course, because of course it was. Of course it was written by a pharmaceutical company. Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.